Hello, spicy friends. So, welcome to the redo. Last night we had some technical difficulties, primarily in my brain. So, we did a little more homework, which I will defend myself because I went and meticulously flicked through this book. Yes, all of the tabs are gone. I'm redoing it. It was a bit excessive. But I was right. His name is Rick Borman. So, but anyhow, this is what is going on tonight. We are going to be covering Hunting Adeline. So, Hunting Adeline is the second book in the Cat and Mouse duet. It's a good deal. It's got more teeth. It's got more teeth than Haunting. This is really rough for the first half. If you have read Haunting Adeline, I'm sure somebody has cautioned you about beginning this one. Myself, whenever I started reading Hunting, I got maybe about 8 or 9 chapters in, and I had to start rereading Haunting as a balm. I went back to book 1 because this one hurt that bad. So the premise in this book is, for the first half, we're dealing with Adeline, who has been kidnapped. This happens at the end of book 1. I've already said that there would be spoilers, so don't come at me. You know. So at the end of book 1, Adeline is kidnapped, and she's being basically taken to a facility that is going to take care of the damage because of her wreck. So she was not intended to be harmed during the kidnapping, but as always, nothing ever goes the way it should. It's just the company that you keep and the people you hire. So we have 2 gentlemen, Rick Borman and Rio Sanchez, who were the 2 men that kidnapped Adeline. They brought her to Dr. Garrison's office to have the gashes and, the internal stuff checked out to make sure she wasn't bleeding internally, because while Adeline is currently at that time on market for $12 million, yeah, somebody put her up on we all know who it was Claire, put her up on the dark web for $12 million. Yeah. 12 million. I swear. So for any of you that don't know what the dark web is, I'm just going to, very easily and very concisely explain it. It is the darkest, most devious, most hateful. Just don't go there. Just don't go there. That's the easiest way to put it. Don't go there. Because you will inevitably find things that you don't want to find, and sometimes they will follow you home. Don't tempt fate, kids. Stay off of the dark web. So Adeline has been kidnapped. She ends up in Dr. Garrison's office, and he's tending to her wounds. Rick doesn't really give a shit about what's going on. He's just more like, money, money, money. Rio is just like, you do realize we are 5 different shades of dead right now, right? You do realize that Z is going to be coming for us, and he is going to smile over our corpses as he discombobulates us, which is fair, because that's what he intended to do. And I can't really blame him. So we're going to leave her in Dr. Garrison's office at the moment, and then we're going to look at what's happening with Zaid. Zaid went into the society's little ceremony, and he wasn't alone. He had some of his men with him, but there was a change in the program, and a bomb went off. So his man, Michael, who was there covering his ass, actually was able to get the child that was due to be sacrificed out of there, which is great. Good job, Michael, Employee of the Year. Zaid, on the other hand, kind of got the wind, more than the wind, knocked out of him. He was knocked flat on his ass with a very large rock behind him. So he just kind of, ow, immense and powerful ow. So Jay realizes what's going on right before it happens. runs in to try to like warn him or do something about it, which Jay, if you don't know who he is basically, hi Michaela. Not much. I was just going over like what happened at the tail end of Haunting and who Rio and Rick Borman are, and that I was right that the dude's name was Rick. And talking, briefly about what the dark web is. The dark web is the place you don't want to go because, like I said just seconds ago, if you go, sometimes you bring things back with you and they're not things you want to hang on to at all. You guys think malware and spyware on ads is bad? Go tiptoeing through the tulips in the dark web. No, don't do that. I'm not encouraging that. Sorry, I was thirsty. So we've left Adeline at Dr. Garrison's house, or his office, which technically it is his house too. He lives there. And we were looking at what's going on with Zaid. Zaid is currently in a heap of trouble under a pile of rubble with a major concussion. So Jay shows up, and like I was saying, if you don't know who Jay is technically, we hear about Jay in book 1, but in book 2, he actually has kind of a more interactive, like presence in the book, in the story. We learn a lot more about Jay, that, he is the older brother to his brother Baron, or not Baron. What is his brother's name? Okay. I know I wrote it down. I don't know what it is. Meh. Oh, wait a minute. Did I write it down? No, I didn't. I don't know. He has a little brother. So in the midst of all of this, we find out more about Jay. Jay is a really interesting character. I hope she plans on doing a book about him. Like, I know, everybody wants books about Rio, and Sibby's got her book. It would just be really cool to have one about Jay. Because, how did he come about meeting Z? Like, that in and of itself is something that I would find very interesting. The details behind how did you find him? Which I have a theory on that. But so Jay comes running into Zaid's aid, and it doesn't really do much of good because Zaid's got a gun pointed at his head, and then Jay ends up with one pointed to his. And that's when the big reveal is made that it is Claire, the redhead, that was supposed to be getting the shit beat out of her constantly by her husband. It's always the ones you least suspect. Although technically you should always suspect a woman, because bitches be shady. That's all I'm gonna say. Especially Claire. Like, anybody that sits there and is quiet, like, it makes me nervous. Quiet people make me nervous. Silence is scary. But so she is revealed as the big bad. She's the one that's been pulling the strings, so to speak, on the society. So Claire has, through her husband, who was a senator, access to multiple levels of, ranking in society, hierarchy, money. She's got more access to more power than her husband really made use of, which, don't really give a shit about Mark. He could, rot in hell. The one who Sibby saved. Huh? I don't know what I'm confused. What one that Sibby saved? I'm confused. Help. But so essentially, we're looking at Zaid. He's kind of in a daze, and then that's when I haven't read Satan's Affair yet. I haven't read that one yet. But so Zaid's being informed that Adeline has been taken, and he does not respond well to that. So it is actually a good thing that Jay left his computer and came in to try to help, because literally without Jay, Zaid probably would have been dead in chapter 1. Like, no, I have not read. Okay, I've read Haunting and Hunting. I have not read. Oh God, my brain just stopped. I haven't read Shallow River, Satan's Affair, and then there's another one. I think it's, let me double check. Damn it, Michaela. Okay, it's not that one. Does It Hurt? I haven't read that one. That one is actually on my TBR for this year, though, so I've got to get that book. I'm getting caught up. I'm still new. But so Jay calms Zaid down. Zaid kind of like keeps his shit together just long enough to get out of the building and put into the back of a van, where essentially Claire has explained that they're going to take Zaid to a undisclosed location and torture him, which is always great. It's nice to have, you know, an itinerary on how your life is going to slowly devolve. So a few witty quibs later, Baron, who is actually another one of Zaid's men, not Jay's brother, ends up smashing into the van that is carrying him, which Claire is also riding along in. And she makes a hasty getaway and leaves her man behind, and Zaid and Jay just like deuce out of there. Zaid immediately wants to go look for Addie, and he's bleeding profusely and cannot really stand. So Jay's like, how about we go and make sure you're not going to die before we try that? Sound like a plan? Think it might be a good idea. So begrudgingly, he goes to the hospital, where apparently he stays for, I think it's like 2 days, and then he is 100% done with being in the hospital. He pitches a laptop across the room, then stands up where he has been strapped to a bed and lifts the hospital bed. I have worked in hospitals. I know exactly how fucking heavy that bed is. The fact that that man could lift that bed in and of itself makes me afraid, because those things are hefty, to put it lightly. But I mean, there's a, you know, kind of like a kindly little nurse that like talks him down and gives him a dinosaur band-aid, which was very sweet. She kind of like, I mean, it was kind of an exposition point from where I'm sitting. Like, it was a way of getting Zaid to talk about what he was feeling and what was going on and how it was affecting him. Instead of having, you know, him and Jay have a heart-to-heart, there was a nurse that stepped in and, you know, gave him a little dinosaur band-aid and was like, so what the fuck is wrong with you? And he explains, you know, my girl's been taken. It was my fault. And the nurse is like, okay, well, just don't break anything else. I'll make sure they don't press charges on you so you can go get her as soon as you're clear. And he's like, I'll pay for all the damages. She goes, that would be greatly appreciated. So at least there's, you know, some peace there. Zaid gets out and immediately goes on the hunt. Jay has been scouring the internet and the dark web from every single possible angle, had all of the teams that work for Z out in the field trying to trace where Addie was taken, and they're coming up empty, which is when he gets the information that Max, we all remember Max, right? Max from the first book, Archie's friend. Yeah. So, long story short, if you have read Haunting, you know that Zaid made an agreement with Max. You leave my girl the fuck alone and I won't kill your entire family. Okay, Pumpkin? Good talking. So, that agreement was working out well. Until Claire decided that she was not going to let that play. Claire went and killed Max's family. And I mean, the entire family. Yeah, we don't like Max. Max is a dick. Like, of the most epic proportions. Just view that in a negative light, because in another way that, no, we're not going there. Hashtag wingspan. Max is then confronted by Zaid, but not before he has his own kind of breakdown. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about that is a theme that carried over from book 1 into book 2 is the severity of the issue of human trafficking. So like I typed ahead before the show, let me see if I can scroll back up. This is one half. So same deal as last night, trigger warnings. This discussion will be at times dealing and speaking about very triggering topics. If you haven't read the books or are uncomfortable with any of the topics, please use your own discretion on what you can handle. Your mental health matters. So we are going to begin looking at one of those aspects that is heavily featured in the first half of this book, and that is human trafficking. So we are all, as adults, aware that bad things happen daily. And the bad things that happen sometimes have good endings and most of the time don't. The majority of people who are actually taken and used in the human trafficking rings and become victims of that, it's very, very rare for them to actually survive. I looked up some stats specific to Washington because all of this is happening pretty much in Seattle, Washington, and then I think Adeline ends up in Oregon at some point. So Washington is known for having the most stringent human trafficking laws in the country. In 2003, Washington became the first state to pass a law that criminalizes human trafficking. Let me say that again. In 2003, Washington was the first state, the first out of 50, that made human trafficking illegal. Way to go, America. Just knocking it out of the park every day. I couldn't believe that when I read that. I was like, excuse me, what? The first state? The first one. I'm going to turn that down. It's kind of blurry in my eyes. So, knowledge is power. The law makes it a serious felony to use force, fraud, or coercion to recruit, harbor, transport, or obtain any person for labor or services. It's the labor and services thing for me that I have issues with, because that's not necessarily the terminology that I would choose, but I didn't write it. In 2021, which was not that long ago, Washington saw a 74% increase in identified victims of sex trafficking compared to a nationwide increase of 39%. So one state saw a greater effect against human trafficking than the entire nation. America, we got some shit to work out. In 2021, 2 criminal human trafficking cases were filed in federal courts in Washington, with 4 defendants that were charged with sex trafficking and none charged with forced labor. So basically, it's just kidnapping, which is interesting. So, according to the National Human Trafficking Hotline, Washington received 955 signals in 2021, compared to 1,087 in 2020, 903 in 2019, 650 in 2008, 596 in 2017, 601 in 2016, and 486 in 2005. So more and more people are actually taking it upon themselves to contact the hotline and actually get involved, which is why Washington seems to have such a greater impact on that particular thing, which when you take that into context with Zaid and his organization, it kind of makes you wonder if the significance of literature impacts the people in that area. Because let's be real, this thing has not, both of these books have traveled. They have legitimately gone worldwide. There is hardly anybody you can find anywhere that doesn't know what haunting or hunting Adeline is. And if they don't, we will find them and educate them, because that's how that works. So it's kind of interesting when you take into context, yes, did her research. She was very, very, very thorough. Very thorough. Which is amazing for an author to actually, look at stats, look at the environment, look at the reality versus what she's hoping to create in her story. It was really it's inspiring to have an author do that. It's really, because she shows that she has an invested interest, not in just making the best book that she can, but she wants to make something that actually shines a light on something that is a problem, which is why I think Zaid's character is, I mean, he's the zaddy, and he's always going to be the zaddy. Okay, focus. But him as a person, like, we're going to touch on that in a second, because I did a little research myself. I cannot confirm if it's correct research because HD Carlton doesn't talk to me. So maybe she'll see this and let me know. Hope I don't make you angry. So also another little tidbit, Washington State human trafficking, according to the Washington State Department of Commerce, because that's who you want dealing with human trafficking, is the Department of Commerce. Kind of makes you wonder. I will say this, it's very accurate to the book, because that's how predominantly it seems like Jay and Zaid are able to actually work around and find some of these victims, is by following the money. And I'm just saying that's weird, but it works, so that's okay. They have served 1,106 victims and survivors of human trafficking, including 287 victims of labor trafficking and 819 victims of sex trafficking. Gotta love those numbers. I swear. It is a hard thing as somebody who has suffered with being a sexual assault survivor. So when you take that into context and you take everything that happens, you have to kind of wonder if the mentality around why that topic was chosen instead of a different employee, because let's be real, Zaid could have been anybody. He could have been a Wall Street banker. He could have been anybody. He could have been, he could have been Batman. Like, there's really no set, decorum on what is what. But the fact that the man does what he does throughout haunting and hunting, and uses his own money to do it, like, Zaid fully funds everything that Z does. His intent is to fully fund his organization Z to where it goes worldwide, to where nobody else will ever have to worry about being taken, being harmed, specifically children. And Haunting Adeline, that is one of the things that, if you have not read the book, I will caution you, there is some situations where that particular side of human trafficking is brought to light, and it made me very angry. Let's just put it this way. Haunting is definitely a book that will make you root for Zaid in a large way. H.D. Carlton is a younger author, about our age, I think. I think that helps the awesomeness, if that makes any sense. I'm going to be 40 this year, so I hope she's much younger than me. She's a very beautiful lady. But Zaid is a Wall Street banker. Hey, he's got the computer skills. Like, hackers can do anything. Hackers can do banking. They can do, don't underestimate what a hacker can do. Just saying, there's some people out there you don't want to fuck with. So, as we were talking awareness, not awesomeness. We were talking about Zaid just a second ago. I guess I should ask, like, I don't know if Squares read the books. I know he's probably Googled stuff. Michaela, you said you've read the book. So what is your opinion on what makes Zaid Zaid? Because there's motive and there's reason behind everything that a character does. And Zaid's reasoning and purpose are very clear. Although in the first book, it's primarily like, I found girl, keep girl safe, keep girl mine, keep other men away, dispose of bodies. with a little rescuing children and investigating the society here and there. You know, you got to do what you set out to do. You can't always be watching a girl sleep. Yes, I'm going to be 40. I'm old as fuck. Yeah, 40 years old. It's going to suck. But, you know, we all get older. I'm at least trying to do it with a sense of humor. I'm going to be old. I'm going to be 40, but I have the mentality of like a 28-year-old. Very childlike. Anyhow, so what do you think like makes Zaid tick? Because there are many different layers to Zaid. Zaid is a stalker, he's a hacker, he's an activist, and he's, what's the word I'm looking for? He has his own trauma. It does not, Zaid has his own trauma, and I say that very carefully because Zaid's trauma does not come from a horrific backstory. He even tells Adeline this, like, nothing happened to me, nothing happened to my parents. Like, this was just a decision that I made because I saw that it was a problem and somebody ought to do something about it. So if nobody else is going to, I will. Which is very, when you think about it, it's very altruistic and it's very inspiring that a character was created that behaves like a hero, but doesn't necessarily adhere to the same strictures that a hero would. Like, it's like the sound that Oscar made. Shout out to Oscar and the Archers. Please do come on the show. I will continue to ask. As it was a sound that Oscar made. And he was like, what was the sound? It says, let me tell you something, princess. A hero will sacrifice you for the greater good. I have no such compunction. I would burn in this world for you. That's Zaid. In a nutshell, that's Zaid. Zaid doesn't care who, what, when, why, or how. He makes stuff happen. Now, the trauma that I'm talking about that Zaid carries with him is from seeing the horrific things that he sees. But he, as we learned in Haunting, he doesn't hide from his mistakes, as he explains to Adeline. That's why all of the scars, that's why the tattoos, he doesn't hide from mistakes. He remembers them so he can learn from them and not have them happen again. But also he takes responsibility for his shit. In Hunting towards the end, I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but one of the girls that was with Adeline at the house that got rescued and Zaid finished her stepdad says a lot about his character and how much he cares. It was Jillian. Yeah. I'm going to get there. But that was, I'm not going to lie, that was fucking awesome. There have been several moments where I was just like, why isn't there a real Zaid? I could really use one. Anyhow, so let's take a look at the psychology of what could be making Zaid Meadows tick. So first off, we have to look at the stalker psychology. So Psychology Today says research suggests that half of one sample of stalkers had a disorder such as an antisocial personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, or borderline personality disorder. So Zaid's one of us. I say that because I don't think Zaid has an antisocial personality disorder. He can interact with people and he has to be able to move within the world. So he's not necessarily antisocial. If he was, he wouldn't be able to function. Narcissistic? No, I wouldn't say he's narcissistic. He's confident. And that comes through experience, not an inflated ego. Zaid has seen so much bad stuff happen to innocent people and made it his mission to try to be the solution. Falling for Adeline just made him more human. I think it made him remember that there's more to the world than mission. And I think that was something that he kind of needed. But like I was saying, so the stalker mentality, the research is showing you're more likely to have one of those disorders. I have borderline personality disorder, and I will be honest with you, there is a lot that happens in hunting that it tracks. It really does track. And the fact that he created a whole community for them to be safe when they had nowhere safe to go, it helped Adeline to start to heal when she visited there. Yeah, that was a beautiful moment. Like, but the mentality of the man, whenever we see Zaid out of the hospital and his mentality going around, doing what he feels needs to be done so he can find Adeline as quickly as he possibly can. He exhibits, he's just one of those tell it as it is people. No filter. No BS, no filter. The things that Zaid does, the not sleeping, the one mentality, but then also the rage, the self kind of like, he blames himself, but he blames himself to a degree that is excessive. I don't think any human being would actually take it to the level of like cutting scars into their body so they will remember their mistake. Like, Zaid blames himself. I mean, that's evident, but he blames himself on a level that pushes him towards that fine, hairy edge. The only reason why Zaid doesn't go over that edge is because he loves Addie enough to know she's the beginning and the end of everything for me. If she's out there being harmed, we're going to do something about it. So another thing that I found out is that BPD is more prominent in women stalkers. Interesting. So there are different types of BPD. I don't know if anybody knows any of that. But there are very specific things that kind of are documented with that. So I particularly think that Zaid suffers from quiet BPD. So regular borderline personality disorder has a lot of different aspects to it. It's really hard to, single out just one, but most of it is fear of being abandoned, fear of not being good enough, fear of making a mistake, fear of not fulfilling a purpose or a need. But it's abandonment is kind of the biggest thing. And you achieve that diagnosis and you end up with this horrible, I wouldn't wish BPD on my worst fucking enemy. Let's just put it that way. I really fucking wouldn't. It is not something that I would ever wish somebody to have. You really need to read Satan's Affair. It's 100 and something pages, but it has some info that's important to the duet. I'm going to read it. I've got to get it. We poor. But so quiet BPD is an internalizing disorder. It is categorized by intense mood swings, which Zaid very clearly goes through. Suppressing anger, which he does to a degree. Withdrawing when upset. He likes his alone time. Avoiding talking to others. He doesn't really want to hear from Jay. He just wants Jay and the team to do what they need to do to find Adeline. Period. Self-blame. I think the rose cut into his chest pretty much sews that one up. Self-isolation. Yeah. He's in his room surrounded by his monitors, watching them constantly, trying to find out what's going on with his girl. Self-harm. Rose. Putting yourself down when bad things happen. The continuous my fault. I fucked up. So minor in psychology, BBD is just broad spectrum of the definition, so much to it. I know. I have it. I have borderline personality disorder. This is quiet BPD. Mine is much louder. Putting yourself down when bad things happen, hurting yourself when you feel rage. So the last part of that is something that I find very, very connective to Zaid, because harming yourself because you don't want to feel the pain of an emotion, please do not do that. Go get help, seek assistance, call a friend, brother, sister, whatever you need to do. Don't do that. But I will say this, the drive to feel something other than pain, I think that is, I don't think so. It's just, I'll just put it this way. I understood a lot more about Zaid after kind of stepping back and taking a look at the rage and looking at what happens after he has a rage episode. There are moments where in the first book, he has she kind of ticks his clock and pisses him off a little bit and he gets angry, but then he kind of pulls it back. And it's not until afterwards that he starts to feel like shit because he's like, wow, I let that go a little too far. And we hear him even say that a time or two where he was like, I let that go a lot further than I meant to, but it's her fault. She pushed me. So it's something that I thought was interesting. It's a place. We try to keep it positive. Looking through my notes here. So where did I leave us off? We were with Zaid. They were looking for Addie. Let's fly back to Dr. Garrison's office and discuss Dr. Garrison. Because, yeah, that man's a fucking monster. Dr. Garrison, for those that don't know, Dr. Garrison is I would say, kind of more like a mob doctor than anything else. He seems like willing to do work for anybody because the society is not just like Rio and Rick are not the only two people that supply him with people to fix. As we learn later on in the book with the Basilisk Brotherhood, which is very interesting. I want a book with them. That would be it. I would read that all day long. Mama T sounds like a fucking badass. I love that character because she's just like sitting there with Zaid and he's like picking up cookies and she's just like, oh, for fuck's sake. And then when they start discussing, well, what's your problem? What are you doing in my house? That sort of thing. Like, what's your problem? What do you want? And he starts explaining, I just want my girl back. And she's just like, well, I hope you find her. And Zaid's like, that's the plan. Yeah. Claire orchestrates things. Dr. Garrison does things. So Dr. Garrison is a physician that was fired from the hospital he was working with because he was found to be abusing his patients. And I don't mean physically. Bad man. So after that, his wife mysteriously dies. The plot thickens. So then he ends up in this, this little back alley business where he has human trafficking victims. He has, kidnap victims, whatever, brought to him so he can treat them and then they can be passed along the line. The unfortunate thing that Zaid and Jay find when they come across Dr. Garrison's office after Adeline has been gone for quite some time. They do see the remnants of Adeline being there, her footprints in blood, her clothing in the bathroom, things like that. When Jay runs the security cam footage, because he finds a camera in the doctor's apartment, as well as in the hospital room, he finds that Dr. Garrison had been drugging his patients and harming them while asleep. Repeatedly. And Zaid's reaction to that was to tell Jay to leave. They know that he's dead. They find his body, they find his corpse, but that's not good enough. Zayd's like, I don't know if you hurt my girl or not, but dead or not, you're still going to pay for it. So what does he do? He uses Dr. Garrison to send a message. So he takes his corpse, ties it up, hoists it up, sets it on fire. That way everybody in the neighborhood will know that he knows. He knows. So it's kind of like, you know, when a ship starts to sink, the rats start to run. So I think that's kind of what Zayd was intending with that message. I think he was intending to make everybody nervous enough to fuck up and do something to where he could actually use that to find information on Addie. He gave me the heebie-jeebies right away. I don't... Any old man that's like, oh, sweetie, oh, honey, it's like, no, go away. I just like that and touching. I don't like being touched. Inevitably, there's always some old person that will walk up and put their hand on your shoulder or like rub your arm. And it's like, dude, no, my fight or flight is heavily weighed towards fight. Don't touch me. As Cusco would say, no touchy. What was your favorite line in the book, Michaela? Do you have a favorite line? I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot to choose from. Mine is so bad. I'm not gonna lie. My favorite line came at the end of the book, which is ironic. My favorite line is, I trust you with my life, but do I trust you not to rip me in half? Absolutely not. I mean, could you blame her? I mean, the funnier one after that is like, next time I'm running. It's like, it's not going to do you any good, sweetie. You've ran before. He still caught you. Like, she ran, like, that's why that line kind of really made me giggle when I read it, because I was like, dude, you knew you were going to get away from him in the Hall of Mirrors. You just gave up halfway through. Like, sweetie, running ain't going to do you any good. Just, you know, just give in and give up. So one of the things that I wanted to touch on as well. Well, what's your favorite line, period, for the whole book? Square, do you have one? I'm getting so many notifications, and I'm hoping it's not one where somebody is like, hey, I can't see the feed. It's my favorite line just because it's the moment, like, it is a moment of realness between the two of them. They have been through hell and back. They have gone through everything, and they've come out the other end. No pun intended. But it's just that it's like a relationship thing. It's the first kind of real moment you see them as not a couple recovering, but a couple recovered, where they're just two people again. And they're learning, you know, they're just communicating within each other. They're not forcing dialogue. They're not begging for answers. They're not pushing each other away. It's them being them. They're everyday, well, sort of normal, them. As normal as it could be, because it is Zayd. But there's a lot of things to deal with. So one of the things, you haven't read it. Square has not read the book. So he is learning a lot of things right now. So you mentioned Sibby earlier, so let's touch on Sibby. So Sybil, is a ex-cult member who is also an abuse victim of her father. I don't think she's ever clinically diagnosed in the book. I think it's just implied that maybe she has schizophrenia. schizophrenia, for any of those that do not know what it is, it's a disorder that affects a person's ability to think, feel, and behave clearly. The exact cause of schizophrenia isn't known, but a combination of genetics, environment, and altered brain chemistry and structure may play a role in it. It would have to be one of the conversations with Zaid, Addie, and Sibby. There's a lot to choose from. Like, Sibby, stop taking your clothes off. That's not happening. Sibby was constantly trying to get Zaid and Addie to consent to some extracurricular activity. That was not going to happen. Zaid doesn't like to share. And after everything Addie's been through, I don't think she'd want to be shared. So schizophrenia is characterized by thoughts or experiences that seem out of speech or behavior and decreased participation in daily activities. Difficulty with concentration and memory may also be present. She's been through, yeah. You can type hell. I've been saying fuck for the last almost hour. The treatment is usually lifelong and often involves a combination of medications, psychotherapy, and coordinated special core services. So whether or not Sibby actually is, not okay in the head. When you think about, like I said, I haven't read Satan's Affair. Wait till you find out what she does at the end of Satan's Affair. I haven't read it yet. I want to read it because I'm very interested in that character. But what's your opinion on Sibby? Is she just a trauma victim that is creating a world that she can exist in, or is she kind of not well? Because at first, whenever I was reading Haunting, I was just like, I don't think this person is well. Hiding in walls, killing random people that smell like demons. What do demons smell like? I mean, I'm sorry. I've watched a lot of Supernatural. I've never seen Dean and Sam walking in and going, smells like demons. I mean, they smell sulfur from time to time, but you always see it. Like, they always make sure there's a line of yellow somewhere. Bedrooms make so much. Why did I rate it? I got to buy it. So, I find Sibby really interesting, but let's set schizophrenia off the table. Do you think it is possible that maybe Sibby is a victim of PTSD? I know, I keep seeing the updates. I'm really, really excited. I can't wait for her new book, Molly, to come out, which I will be the first to admit, I did not know that the Molly from the new book was the Molly from this book. Molly is a character in this book that Adeline finds and connects to. If you've ever watched V for Vendetta, it's kind of very similar in methodology to when Evie is kidnapped and thrown into the cells, and then she finds that letter and continues to read that letter, and it kind of helps her grow and survive. It's kind of, comfort. Molly had a journal or a diary, and she was writing in it while she was captive in the same house that Adeline is being held in, that is ran by Francesca, who is like fucking Cruella de Vil on meth, in my opinion. Like, the woman loves her high heels. I'm not going to go into detail. Read the book. Just going to say that. She loves her high heels. Go, you read it. I'm not going to, no, we're not going there. But, so Molly finds a way to get out. She escapes. And she leaves her diary behind. And Adeline, whenever she is, I think she's been there for a total of, I wrote it down. So Molly's first diary entry is on June 8th, 2008. Addie finds the diary after she's been there for, I think, a week. I think she says 7 days. So When she's been there for 7 days, she finds this diary buried in the floorboards. And it kind of makes her wonder if somebody up there is not looking out for her, because she found her grandmother's diary in the first book, and that kind of led her to a greater understanding, not just of herself, but of, the wider view of the world and how things can affect you, but also affect like a spider web of people around you. Yes, definitely a victim. I don't want to spoil anything. I'm all about spoilers. I don't care. But I did warn people. But so Adeline starts writing in the diary to kind of stay sane, I guess is the easiest way to explain it. Is she does it to utilize the comfort that she's able to get from expressing wants and desires, and to keep her mind sharp, so she doesn't kind of go off the rails like Sydney. So the house that Adeline ends up in, like I said, is ran by a horrific woman by the name of Francesca. Francesca is, like I said, like whenever I was reading the book, immediately went to Glenn Close's like version of Cruella de Vil. Like that's what I was seeing. Just a woman in very tight, like pencil skirts and high heels that were just clip clopping. And I will say honestly, reading the book, that was the most horrific thing that, I mean, the nightmares that Adeline suffers with after the fact. I've had residual nightmares like that before. Sometimes I still get them. They're not great. 10 out of 10 would not recommend. But the fact that she was so psychologically damaged by what happened to her in that house, which is totally understandable, that she could fool herself so completely into believing that she heard her heels walking in the hallway outside her bedroom in her own house. That hurt. Because that's like, if you are a trauma victim, if you are a victim of sexual assault or physical assault or something like that, inevitably there's going to be something that triggers you the easiest. For some people, it's a smell. For some people, it's a sound. For some people, it's, recognizing a color, shape, something that gets imprinted at the moment that the bad thing is happening. Me, it's a sound. So whenever I read that she was having almost hallucinations at times, thinking that Francesca was walking, outside her room there in Parsons Manor, was just, that hurt. That hurt really bad. Which, I mean, logically, there's no way that Francesca would survive in Parsons Manor, because we all know that Gigi and Nana's ghosts are still hanging around, and I don't think those ladies would let anybody fuck with Addie. But getting back to Miss Francesca. So, Francesca and her brother, Rocco. Do you have a Kindle or read ebooks? I have a Kindle and I read ebooks. I prefer the physical copy. I'm weird. But, so Rocco is, Rocco is a fat piece of shit. That's the best way I can describe him. He's a giant tub of lard that is a miserable human being and deserves hell. The furthest reaches, the darkest depths. When I was reading this book, the first moment, and we all have moments that I'm sure are different and some are the same. The first moment I reached in this book that I physically had to put it down because it kind of threw me back into remembering my own trauma was the moment that Rocco abuses Addie. It is the first time she is assaulted, and it is vile, and it is horrific. And she did what she did to try to protect one of the other girls, Bethany. And later on, she kind of slowly makes herself realize that these girls are not my allies. These girls will never be my allies. We're all here and we're all trying to survive. They stood by and watched that happen, which is an interesting thing to discuss. It's difficult to discuss, but I wanted to bring that up specifically with the girls and specifically with Rio. I know Rio is a very popular character. I'm going to end up getting a lot of people are not going to like me after this. I don't like Rio. I don't like him at all. I'm very Zayd in the mentality when it comes to Rio. So Rio is one of the men that helped kidnap Addie. He is also a man that is in that house, and he is responsible for making sure that Adeline heals properly and just kind of keeping an eye on her. He never tries to harm Adeline, but he never stops someone from harming Adeline. So my question is, we know Francesca and Rocco and the girls stood by and watched things happen. For the girls, it was mostly self-preservation. For Francesca and Rocco, it was them watching the show. Rio himself was being abused by Francesca. Does that excuse him allowing Adeline to be abused? See, this is the crux of the position. People seem to say that it's okay that Rocco's not a bad guy. He's not a bad character because he was being abused. His sister was being held hostage, so he would stay compliant. And he, what was the third one? Oh, he helped Adeline escape. So those three things are meant to be excuses for why Rio, or not excuses. Let me rephrase that. Reasons why Rio deserves to be forgiven. As a sexual assault survivor, I cannot find any of those to be enough of a reason to forgive the man that put me in the position to be harmed repeatedly. Because let's put it this way. At any point in time in that van on the way to Dr. Garrison's, it was Rick and Rio. Rick and Rio, just those two. Rio didn't even want to be involved in this in the beginning. Like, he's very, very vehemently against doing anything that was going to piss Z off. He went along with it anyways because he was told to. But at any point in time after she is kidnapped, it is him and Rick in that van. So why didn't he kill Rick? Why didn't he shoot him in the head? Why didn't he knock him out of the van and then take Adeline home? Because I think we all know that had he taken that route, Zayd would have found his little sister and made sure she was safe. And he wouldn't have had to worry about being brutally murdered. But he didn't do that. He did not, when they reached Dr. Garrison's, do anything to set her free. If anything, he did something to protect her value by killing Dr. Garrison when he tried to borrow or claim, however you want to word it. Yes, Zayd does rescue Rio's sister. Her name is Katerina. She is 11 years old. And she was being held by a woman named, I wrote it down. Where is it? Lillian is the woman that was holding Katerina. 11 years old. Yeah. Too late to have a conscience, though. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's at any point in time, any step could have been taken to halt what he knew was waiting for her, whether in the van the first time, at Dr. Garrison's, or in the van heading to Francesca's house. At any point in time, he could have stopped. At any point in time. At any time that he knew those men were hurting Adeline, he could have found a reason to step in. He could have found a cause or a lie or something to do. He could have done something. One of the problems is this. When it comes to self-preservation, I can understand the girls not getting involved because you are innocent and you are being harmed repeatedly, and it does things to you. I'm not excusing the damage that was done to Rio or his sister. I'm not assuaging any guilt of that. However, you were given at least 3 opportunities to change your mind and make a different decision that you knew one way or the other was going to not only impact your life, but the innocent person that you had stolen. So, the first time he chose not to do that, that's strike 1. At Dr. Garrison's, Rick wasn't anywhere around whenever he shot the doctor in the head. That's strike 2. On the road to Francesca's, could have killed Rick then. Strike 3. I can't forgive him. I can't. And I know it's a tricky situation because there are circumstances where victims harm other victims inadvertently because they are afraid. Fear will make you do a lot of shit that you don't think you would ever do. Fear, everybody likes to say that love is the most powerful motivator. No, fear is. Fear is the very strongest motivator there is, especially for human beings. Zaid was doing a lot of what he was doing out of love for Adeline, but it was also fear that was driving him to do the things that he did as fast as he did to the extremes that he did, because he knew what was happening to her. So, does being afraid wipe away all of the things that could have been avoided? I mean, it's hard to say for sure. It's hard to say what balances the scale. Like, essentially, at what point does it become no, that can't be excused or reasoned or rationalized? And what point does it become you've crossed that line? You've made decision after decision after decision. You've made that choice. Own it. That's essentially what I take away from what Zaid tells Adeline is no, he had the opportunity. He had 3 at least, and he didn't do it. And she tries to say, well, because of his sister. And Zaid says, that is true. But if he knew that you were my girl, he would have known he had an asset that he could have used to get his sister out. It's hard. It's hard for me to consider forgiving Rio. And there's a part at the end of the book, I won't spoil it, that he kind of says the same thing. Because Zaid does not forgive, but he lets him live. Because Adeline asked him to. And she even herself admits that she asks for Rio to be spared, not because she doesn't think that he caused bad things to happen to her and to others, but because the small things that he did are what kept her alive long enough to be freed. And he helped her escape. It's hard. It's hard. I mean, I don't know. I can't say for certain that I would act differently. It's a very tricky thing. And that's one of the things that I will say in both Haunting and Hunting that H.D. Carlton does very, very well. She will put you in a moment where something is happening that makes you uncomfortable. And you have to push your way through that. And in a way, it makes you deal with questions that you normally wouldn't be asking yourself. And it makes you logic and even criticize parts about yourself that you're learning about while reading these books. I've said numerous times, like, Haunting Adeline and Hunting Adeline are not just smutty books. They're not just, they're not just that. These books, in a lot of sense, I believe, help victims, because they help them to rationalize and realize that things happen to people for no reason. And that shouldn't determine your value as a person. And it shouldn't determine how long it takes you to recover. It shouldn't, it shouldn't clear, it shouldn't mean that you count yourself out, or as broken, or as unwantable, or as not worthy of a second chance. Survivor's guilt is not just for people who have gone through war or gone through, traumatic instances and severe cases. Survivors, my brain just stopped. Survivor's guilt is also something that that sexual assault victims have to deal with as well. One of the most important statistics I will say that I came across while researching the human trafficking part that I wanted to discuss about this book was I'm probably going to get the year wrong. In 2011, I believe it was. In 2011, the youngest child that was ever documented as being a victim of sex trafficking was 4. And immediately after I read that, I thought back to the little girl that was at that mansion for the dinner that Zaid got out, and she asked if he would be her daddy. The majority of children that are taken and put into sex trafficking are taken from school after hours activities, from parks, from their own backyards. It is something that is uncomfortable for adults to have to discuss. It is something uncomfortable for humanity to have to recognize. But until we start doing that, which is very much what Zaid says in the first book and in the second book, and what Addie comes to realize, is that until you start facing the scary things, the hard things, the bad things, nothing changes. Zaid saw something as a younger man that he knew he could do something about, and he took the initiative to do it. But the youngest woman that was ever found, she was found after 20 years. The youngest woman that has ever been documented and survived sex trafficking was 29. "12 years. Another thing I will say that I found morally reprehensible about states' governments and our government in general, not to be political, was the fact that the anti-sex trafficking laws that are in place, there is no way of getting justice against these sex traffickers. It is treated as a form of almost like fraud within employment, like they're withholding wages. So the only thing a victim can do is take their assaulter, their kidnappers, to court and sue them for recompense for time and labor rendered. Tell me that ain't 5 different shades of fucked up. Now, I could be I could be wrong about the totality of that, but what research I found when I read that, I was like, really? There's nothing legally that can be done because of the way that crime is categorized within the overall arcing sphere of what passes for law and order in our country. It's so bad. Okay, that hurt. Ow. So, I'm trying to find something happy. I'm trying to find something happy. It's so there's not a whole lot of happy in here. I mean, there is afterwards, but I think I wrote down Jay's brother's name from the state. 6 years old. Cameron. Jay's brother's name is Cameron. I found it. I knew I wrote it down. So, Jay lives with his younger brother. Their parents were drug addicts and skipped out when Jay was 16 and Cameron was 7. Jay worked numerous jobs and his kid brother hid his kid brother from the state 6 years after Jay had legal guardianship of Cameron. Cameron doesn't know what Jay does for work right now. At the current point in hunting Adeline, when we come across Cameron, he is 13 years old. And he doesn't even know that his brother is a badass. So that'll be interesting. Apparently, Cameron is very into video games. Now, one of the very important things to remember is that there are assets out there. If you have gone through something like this or a different form of trauma, please do go get help. Reach out, find resources, ask questions, do whatever you have to take care of yourself because you're worth it. Adeline herself was not able to put herself back together, as she said it. She knew that Zaid would put the broken pieces of her back together, and that he would love her regardless of what shape it formed. But he brought in a therapist that he used for all of the children and the women that he rescued, Dr. Maybell. Dr. Maybell is one of the unsung heroes in hunting Adeline. She takes such good care of Addie. She helps Addie to rationalize and to kind of come back to herself and work through all of her trauma. And it's very, very inspiring to see somebody dedicate their time to doing something like that for so many people. The closest thing to Zaid had before. The closest thing, yeah, Jay is the closest thing that he had, but also Ruby. Ruby is his mother's Michaela, I'm gonna kick your ass. I was so mad at her dad. I'm not gonna lie, the moment, so we're skipping ahead a little bit. To skip ahead, bad things happen to Addie's parents because they're trying to get Adeline back, and Sibby, Zaid, and Adeline with Jay kind of in an earpiece, which Jay's a badass. I don't think we need to like minimize that. Jay is a badass. This dude had a fucking drone flying and shot a sniper that was being shielded, like body heat shielding, in a tree. He killed him with a drone. That's badass. Jay's like, work for the CIA? Nah. Work for the NSA? Too much paperwork. Work for Z? Get cool toys. plausible deniability. So there are bad people that are sent by Claire, of course, that take Adeline's parents hostage because they know that she will come for them. And come for them she does with Zaid and Sibby. And that does not go according to plan. One, because Sibby just, you wind her up and you let her go. That's all there is to it. Adeline has been taught and has trained herself to take care of herself, to protect herself, and to protect others, which is what I think is the most inspiring thing, is that even though she was tormented and punished for helping others while she was stuck in that fucking house, she still came out the other side of it, wanting to be able to take care of herself and wanting to be able to help others. Adeline Raleigh is kind of an awesome person. So, yeah. So there's an accident and a ricochet bullet hits Adeline's mom. They get her, put her in the car, start driving to the two doctors' offices. Like there's a doctor that works for Zaid. He handles a lot of his wounds and a lot of his people's wounds. I'm trying to find. Okay, so there's Teddy, and I believe, what is the other fricker's name? I had written that down, like someplace. There's Teddy and Thomas, I think it's their names, that they're basically, one is a retired physician, and yeah, treated old friends, Teddy Angler and his son Tanner. My bad, not Thomas. Tanner and Teddy. Teddy is a retired surgeon, but has been working for Z since the beginning. Teddy is a nurse, and that is when that's how that happens. So they take her there. Her mom is fine. She's treated. Her wounds she's fine. But her dad is a real see you next Tuesday on the way there. Like, granted, his wife has been injured and there have been people who've broken into his house and he's been scared half shitless. But I will say this, Zaid don't give a fuck. You talk badly about my girl and the next person that you're going to be walking, I'm going to knock your teeth down your throat, Dad. Like, he was not even, Zaid was like, you are in my car? You will shut the fuck up. I will turn this car around and take you back. I love Zaid. I love Zaid's like mentality about things. He's just like, do not even begin to go there with me. Like, just don't. 1000%. Yes, I will admit I did not like the mom in the first book. She was kind of an asshole. I didn't like how she talked about Nana all the time. Like, she just kept throwing Nana under the fucking bus. It's like, dude, you knew your mother had been horrifically fucking brutally murdered. How are you going to be functional? She's a child. So, one of the interesting things that I did want to ask was, do we think, and feel free to leave a comment, do we think that Dr. Garrison also took care of Molly when she was taken? Because it would seem like that would be something that would happen. Like, he would be the one that everybody goes to, essentially. Like, you've got a one-stop shop with Dr. Garrison. So did he take care of Molly? Will he make a reappearance in a book? The world may never know until HD tells us. So after the trauma, after going and visiting the compound where all of the survivors are healing and living off the grid at Zaid's expense, I love how like they pull onto the grounds and Addie's like looking around at all of this shit and she's just like, who pays for all of this? And he's like, me. She's just like, you're really rich, aren't you? He goes, yeah, but it all goes back into the, everything goes back into this. So like, if I need to build more dormitories, I just buy more land, build more dormitories. We've got places like this. These safe houses are everywhere. And she's just sitting here in the car going, You broke into my house and stalked me and cut a dude's hands off, but like, I think that's the moment when Adeline's like, I've been fighting the wrong person. So after that, we all know that there is something very, very poignant that happens. Adeline goes and asks Zaid to take her to get a tattoo. And of course, he thinks it's going to be his name. And she says no. He even offers to have her name tattooed on his ass. And she said, keep dreaming. So I think he probably went and did it anyhow, if I'm being honest. Let's be honest here. We know that Zaid went without her and had it fucking done. We know he did. We're just waiting on confirmation, HD. We all know that Zaid went and got his ass tattooed with Adeline's name, because who else is going to see it but Adeline? And we know Zaid likes to do things that are shocking. What's more shocking than your man dropping trowel and then seeing your name in beautiful script across that ass? That would be a marring of that ass, though. I think Adeline would probably be pissed. So Adeline's tattoo, she got an elaborate rose tattoo around her wrist with a stem wrapping around her arm, to cover the barcode that Rio tattooed on her wrist. Yeah, Rio's a talented man. Not going to go there. So as I did with the first book, there were a few locations that I was able to match to certain locations that were created for the book and were in the book by Google searching stuff. So I took the basic geography of where Parsons Manor would be sitting, where Zaid's apartment is sitting, where like the compound is and everything, and triangulating things. There is a tattoo shop in Seattle, Washington. It's called Nieu Studio. You type it in the chat, make it easier for you guys to actually see how it's spelled. So I looked through many tattoo portfolios in the area. And this one actually, this shop actually seemed to have quite a few examples of roses, and they were done pretty well, more so than the other ones that I saw. So I think this would be the one that Addie would go to. Feel free to Google it. They have a 5.0 rating. Their address is 2514 4th Avenue, Seattle, Washington, 98121. So go get yourself a tattoo. Might be at the same tattoo shop that Addie had hers done. It'd be pretty cool. So we know after the tattoo, I hope JL's watching. After the tattoo, they go get ice cream. So this was another Google search. There were many ice creams that came up, but there was no, I think it was like Taste and Crunch or Lick and Crunch or something. That was the name of the ice cream shop. So there were none of those, unfortunately. However, there were many other ice cream shops. So judging by the type of ice cream that they were eating, judging from where they were coming from, again, triangulating their location within the city, I found an ice cream shop that I think you will agree would definitely be the one that Zaid would choose. And once I post the name, you'll know why. Yeah. There's an ice cream shop called The Nutty Squirrel. I encourage you to check it out. There are quite a few locations in Seattle. So the one I was looking at was on Piney Ridge at 7212 Greenwood Avenue North, Seattle, Washington, 98103. It deals in soft serve and gelato. And I believe they carry mint chocolate chip. So maybe go get yourself a tattoo and go get some ice cream. You might get to relive a couple of things from the novel. Have fun. So I'm trying to see what else we need to kind of touch on. We've talked about Dr. Mabel. We've talked about that sister. Oh, I didn't mention the number of survivors that are at that compound that Adeline goes and visits is 132 survivors. 132. And that's not the only place that he has running. So y'all just see me throwing shit behind me. I'll pick it up later. Adeline's first diary entry is the 21st of January, 2022. Don't tell me that he wouldn't have picked the nutty squirrel. You and I both know that Zaid would have gone straight for the nutty squirrel. Because Adeline would have just looked up, read the sign, and just been like, oh my God, really? I mean, that's not where they went in the book. It was the closest approximation. It just seemed to fit. So Francesco and Rocco's last name is Bellucci. Trying to see what else I need to mention. So Adeline had been home for a month when Michael comes to babysit for Jay because symptoms had begun to include, or her symptoms had begun to progress where she was having nightmares or unwanted memories of the trauma. She was avoiding of situations that bring back memories of the trauma, heightened reactions, anxiety, or depressed mood. Treatment for such was different types of trauma-focused psychotherapy, as well as medications to manage symptoms. She was suffering from PTSD. So I think the last person that we need to talk about is Sibby. Sybil. Sybil is quickly and like she is a ball of fire. She is just absolutely fucking adorable. I'm not gonna lie, she's fucking adorable. I love Sibby. So in the first book, we come across Sibby at Satan's Affair. She's in the haunted house, and she crawls out of the wall and confronts Zaid when he's trying to find Adeline and Dea. Oh, we need to talk about Dea too. So after Sibby, we're going to cover that, and then we're going to close out. So Sibby ends up taking the fall for the 3 dead senators. Remember, he carts Mark off and takes care of him later. So she took the rap for that. She ended up in jail, and then they started moving her around. And then she broke out. So Zaid went and got her and brought her to Parsons Manor without asking Adeline at all. It was like, oh yeah, I know you're recovering from trauma, but I kind of owed her, you know. And Adeline's just like, welcome home. She's just like, whatever, I don't care. Pick a room, any room, as long as it's not mine. No, they did not. They did not adopt her. Zaid joked about adopting her. And Adeline was like, hold up, cowboy, I ain't ready for a kid. And he's just like, you will be eventually. And she's just like, don't hold your breath. So, but there was a moment where she met Katerina, and when Katerina hugged her, she looked at Zaid and was just like, I would adopt this girl right now if you fucking asked me to. Right now. Probably would be a mistake later, but I would still do it. I don't know how Zaid would feel about that particular child. I mean, I don't know. He might actually, you know what? I don't think Zaid would actually have a problem with adopting Katerina. I don't. I think I think that would be a nice thing of him. Tells you what she does to break out. I won't be surprised. So Sibby is a very unique individual. We first come across her in Haunting Adeline. She's dressed up as a doll with cracked makeup. And I mean, it's a haunted fair. She's going to look psychotic. So she takes care of the senators. She has imaginary henchmen not people, like not friends, henchmen that help her rid the world of demons. And how does she tell who's demons? Through their smell. Yeah. At first, she thinks Zaid smells like a demon. And then she's like, no, you were just standing around too many. I couldn't tell what you actually smelled like. Okay. Sippy plays a bigger part in all of this. When they are going and trying to find out information on where Claire is, they go to bug her lawyer's office. And who do they send in for the job? Sippy. Which she does a pretty good job. We have to give her points for that. She does a very good job. She did knock a few things over and then bump into the lawyer outside and get recognized. But other than that, I love Sibby. She has no inhibitions. She has no qualms about who she is or why she does the things she does. And I think she very quickly becomes not a friend, but more of like a little sister to Adeline. It's very sweet. Like they still spar with each other and Sybil kicks her ass, but then they also sit on the couch and watch TV together and eat popcorn. So it's cute. It's adorable. It's very sweet. But it's nice to see Sibby in that setting. Once it seems to be like once she arrives at Parsons Manor, like she doesn't change, but she kind of settles. Like she's not as restless. However, whenever they have to go on the trip to Addie's parents' house, they have to leave her henchman behind, and that doesn't really sit well with Sibby. It kind of messes with her head a bit. So that was something that had to be dealt with. And then, of course, there's the coup de grace at the end of the book when Serena, I think, isn't that her mom's name? Serena? Shows up and she has a friend with her. It's supposed to be like a nurse's aide or something. And Sibby walks through the living room while they're sitting there talking and bonding and all of that stuff. And then she looks over and goes, "What the fuck are you doing here?" Because he calls her by her like full name. She's just like, "The fuck are you doing here?" Next day, both of them are gone. Color me not shocked. We don't know if it was consensually gone. They're just gone. Yeah, going back to what we were talking about the dad real fast. Adeline's dad basically disowned her because of her being with Zaid. Just a class act. What a twat. All right, so we're going to end on the very last character that we need to touch on, which is Dea. Dea is one of the most important characters in both books because she is the character that grounds every person in the story. She grounds Adeline during the first book. She grounds Zaid in the first half of this book. It becomes a thing that we see with Dea where she kind of sets her own pain and her own trauma aside to take care of the people that she loves. So Dea comes from a very loving, very large family. Adeline is very dear to her. She comes and has Christmas and Thanksgivings with her. They go to the fair every year together. They're very close. They've known each other for forever. So she is Zaid's annoying little sister, kind of, sort of. Yeah. Not Dea, Sibby. Dea, whenever Zaid finds out that Dea was taken by Luke, he immediately goes, because his mentality on that matter was, you fuck with my girls' friends and family, you fuck with me, because they're also mine. So that is a really interesting point of view for Zaid. He doesn't just look at Adeline as his thing to take care of, his things to, like, that's his person. He looks at the people around her that matter to her and says, if they fuck with you or them, I'm in the mix as well. Which is a beautiful thing. But we learn a lot about Dea being a giver. One thing I do love and greatly appreciate H.D. Carlton for was allowing Dea to get justice in the most epic way. Hats off to you, lady. Thank you for that. That made me very happy. She killed Luke after Zayd shot him in the knee. Which, fucker had it coming. That's all I'm going to say about that. Fucker had it coming. Dea, I believe, gets the same treatment as Addie. She is given the access to Dr. Maybell and is, going through therapy at the moment to, get over what was done to her. She also kind of almost starts to live at Parsons Manor. She continues to help Zayd and Jay work through trying to find out where Claire is because she wants some fucking vengeance, and I don't blame her. But Dea, I think, is one of the characters that kind of does get lost a little bit because she's kind of always seen as like the stability character. Like when Addie's having a bad day or having a bad moment, like she's the levity, she's the person that gets her out of her head and that sort of thing. But when we see Dea in book 2 in Hunting Adeline, we see a completely different person. She's not the same. And the only way I can describe it is Dea is not as bright. Like she used to shine bright. Now she's a little dimmer. And it hurts to read that. There's a moment in the kitchen where Dea tells Adeline about what happened to her. Adeline doesn't share a lot of what happened about her to Dea because she's not compounding her trauma with hers. She's a good friend. So that conversation was really difficult, but it was also very telling about both characters, about both women. They cared about each other enough to share things that were damaging to them, that they were ashamed of for no reason. They didn't have a reason to be ashamed, but they shared those things with each other because they were like sisters. So it was kind of a beautiful thing to see Dea get more attention in this book. Again, I'd love to know more about her because how did she end up as a member of Z? I mean, Addie was off being a writer and traveling the world. Dea is just like, you know what? I'm going to become a hacktivist. Like, that's the career path for me. Her mother does kind of lighten up and treat her better. Her dad's still a dick, though. I don't fucking like him. If y'all want to know why I said I was going to kick Michaela's ass, it's because she sent me a book. She sent me Satan's Affair as an ebook. Woman, I don't like it when people buy money for me. Or buy things for me. I'm not great with gifts. I don't even know how to do that. It's on Amazon. You paid for that. How dare you, woman? For the love of Christ. Now I know what one of my side reads is going to be for next month. Because I already read the book for next month, which is The Predator. Thank you very much, Michaela. That was very nice of you. So, do you have anything else you want to mention before we close out, Michaela? Claire was stupid. Oh yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, we probably should say something about that. Adeline gets her revenge on Xavier. We didn't even talk about the culling. So the culling is a thing that happens in Francesca's house with the girls. It's a kind of like, those there's a video out that was like the Deadliest Prey or some shit. Can't remember what it was called. But basically, essentially, you have the girls and a maze, and they have to run through the maze, which also has traps and shit all throughout it. So you have to learn the course, essentially, to evade. If you are shot, you are seen as unworthy of remaining in the house, and you are killed. Sydney, who is a massive asshole, loves to trip Adeline and make her fail. Sydney doesn't live for very much longer towards the end of part 1 of the book. So all's well that ends well. She gets her comeuppance. But the culling is not only traumatic, it is something that stays. And I think that's primarily the thing that haunts Adeline the most, is that Adeline is forced to make a decision. One of the girls, Phoebe, was going to be caught, and then she got away, and the man that was hunting her was caught in a snare, lifted up into the air. She picked up his crossbow, and she killed him. So then everybody else was hunting Phoebe. They caught her. They harmed her. She was basically, injured to the point where she probably wasn't going to survive. So then Francesca gives all of the other girls rocks. And they are meant to stone Phoebe to death. So it is a slow, painful death. Adeline refuses to do that. She hits Sydney with her rock, then runs up to Phoebe, throws herself on top of her, shielding her with her body, and pulls a stick from the fire that they were meant to throw Phoebe's body on. And she tells her to close her eyes and go to sleep, that it will be okay. And she sends Phoebe off in a much nicer way than she would have ended up. Yeah, Zayd did find Dea. I did say thank you. Thank you, Michaela. Yeah, Zayd did find Dea, and whenever Adeline is found in the train, Dea is there along with Ruby and Michael. So that was kind of a beautiful thing. Whenever Adeline's brought out, Dea is just like, "Come here, bitch! I want a fucking hug." Like, HD Carlton, if you ever watch this, make sure you send this girl an autograph or something. She's so sweet. What? Excuse me? What? I thought so, but I didn't. I wasn't sure, but I thought so. I thought so. Like, I thought she was like the older sister. I don't like Sydney, though. I really don't like Sydney. Like, I think Sydney got more than what she was deserving of. Like, granted, see, this is where it's a hard thing to say. It's a hard thing to say, fuck Sydney. She was an asshole. She hurt other people. She caused other people to be hurt. She was more than willing to kill other people. But when you look at her, it's like, well, how do people like that go from being victims to being perpetrators? How do you go from being, a victim to a monster? And it kind of coalesces into fear. Fear changes people. Fear alters the way your mind works. It alters the way your body responds to things. Fear is the great motivator and the great destroyer. That is the one thing that is universally true in both books that HD wrote, was the effect that fear has on people. And the fact is that Zayd knows this. Zayd knows this, and he uses it to his benefit in the work that he does. So it's a kind of interesting thing. But I did not know that, but I thought so. Yeah, the fire scene with Phoebe was fucking hard to read. There were a few scenes that I had to stop because I just couldn't. The first one was the first trauma with Rocco. The second one was the shoe scene. I'm not going to go into detail on that. Then the culling. There were a lot of moments that I had to put the book down and just kind of take a break, which I want everybody to understand that this is my personal opinion on these books, and it will remain my personal opinion on these books. I think H.D. Carlton is a brilliant writer. I am very grateful for the people who turned me on to her writing and told me about these books and bought me one of her books. I'm very grateful because as somebody who has sustained trauma, this book did more good for me than it did harm. And specifically speaking about hunting. Hunting was hard for me to read. I'm not going to lie. It was very, very hard to read. But what this book did for me, it may not do this for other people, but it did it for me, was it gave me the opportunity to stop running away from things that harmed me in my own experience and face them. It says in hunting. What? No, I guess I missed it. I did it. Did I read that? I'm sure I probably knew that. Because at one point, I think I texted JL and was like, JL, is Sydney Sybil's sister? Compound after Sibby left. That's gonna be an interesting conversation between Sibby and Addie. Whoops. No whoops. She had it coming. But like I was saying, this book helped me face things that I had been... When you have something bad happen to you, more often than not, you just want to forget it. But it doesn't go anywhere. It stays with you. Primarily, also, if you are like me and you don't get therapy right away to deal with it. I just started therapy last week. I've had 2 sessions, and it's nice. It's nice to be able to talk to somebody openly and honestly and be free with what I need to say and get off my chest. It's amazing. But this book did more good for me than it did harm. It made it possible for me to face some demons and stop being afraid of them and be like, you know what? I'm strong enough to face this. I'm strong enough to go through this, and I'm strong enough to go through this with Addie because I understand. So, thank you, HD. You did a brilliant job. I will still reiterate, though, there are trigger warnings for a reason. Before you take on haunting or hunting, please do read your trigger warnings. Be responsible. As she says in the trigger warnings, your mental health is important, so be aware. Trigger warnings in dark romances are important because they prevent anybody else from going to a dark place. Because coming into book talk and diving into these books, I learned very quickly that's the deep end. We went from tiptoeing with ACOTAR into hunting Adeline. So we went pretty far, pretty fast. And it was something that, it was a learning experience, but I love these books. I'll probably read them again at some point in time. I've already read Haunting again, while I was reading Hunting. Will I ever read Hunting again? Probably not the first half. The first half is pretty rough. Not gonna lie. It's pretty rough. But yes, whoever's watching, please read the trigger warnings before reading. It is a very dark romance with psychological thriller aspects. So please do check it out. Make sure to go check out HD's page on TikTok, on Instagram. I'm not sure. I think she has a Facebook group or something like that. Go check that out. She has merch on her website. She also has special editions of her books. Go check that out. Send her a message and let her know what you think about this book. If you give it a shot, come back here, leave us a message in the comments and let me know how you liked it, what you did like, what you didn't like. It's always nice to hear from other people because the nuance in experience is interesting because characters differ from person to person. And I think Zaid and Addie are some characters that, while they may be fluid and interpreted in different ways, they're some characters that I've grown to really care about and really treasure. They're amazing characters. They were very brilliantly written. And while this is a dark book with dark subject matter, I believe HD did an incredible job writing something like this. Like, I'll be honest with you, I very much doubt that anybody could have done a book like this as well as she did. Just my point of view on it. Addie wasn't mad at Sibby. I don't think Addie would be mad at Sibby. I think Sibby would be mad at Addie for reasons that we will not divulge here. But I think the only thing Addie was mad at Sybil about was the fact that she couldn't keep her fucking clothes on. But thank you to Michaela. Thank you to Square for coming and keeping me company and for the discussion. I had a lot of fun. I'm going to try to work up some more shows to do this month. I don't know what dates I'm going to have things planned for, but I will definitely make sure everybody knows with the promo that I'll post on TikTok and on Instagram. Also, I am trying to work something out where I want to try something new and different on the channel, something that's more interactive. Don't know if it's going to work. Don't know if it's not going to work, but we're going to give it a shot. The next book on the set reading list after this book is The Predator by Runix. I've already finished it. I have videos up on the pod page on TikTok if you have any questions about what my thoughts were on that book. They're very clear on... No, wait a minute. I fucked up. No, that's not the next book. My bad. That's not the next book. I really need to go and have my memory tested. Starting to kind of concern me. The next book in March that we will be discussing is Flock by Kate Stewart. So in March, we're covering 2 books. We're covering Flock and Exodus. Then the next month, we're going to be covering The Finish Line and One Last Rainy Day, which is Dominic's book, which is going to cause me all manner of physical trauma. Don't get me wrong, I love this book, but it made me cry. It hurts so bad. Oh, ow, my finger. But I'm going to sign off, you guys. Like I said, I want to make sure I got that right. Flock and Exodus in March, then The Finish Line and Last Rainy Day in the next month. And then after that, the whole month, I think it's June, is the Runix series. And it's all of it. It's the Predator, the Reaper, the Annihilator, the Emperor, the Finisher. So many. Just, we're going to give it our best shot. So far, I've gotten the Predator read. I'm working on the last little bit of Exodus. I'm almost done with it. I've finished Flock. After I finish Exodus, I don't know. I'm going to figure it out because I want to read fucking Satan's Affair now that I have it. Satan wasn't mad at Addie. Sibby said she understood. Well, that's good. Yeah, they did have that conversation, didn't they? Because Adeline was just like, you remind me of somebody. But guys, go check out HD Carlton'S page. Go check out all of her merch on her site. Go check out the special editions of these books. Go check out all of these books on Amazon if you want to get a copy quick and fast and just have fun with it. But again, caution. Make sure you read the trigger warnings. It's important to do that, particularly with dark romance. But until next time, I'll see you guys later. Bye.